Our speaker today comes to us with a very special talk on Howard Hughes and Spruce Goose. Mr. Deutsch was originally in the Air Force, has a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, MS in systems management from USC, and marketing MBA from Santa Clara. He was the operations director for a top secret reconnaissance satellite program known as Hexagon. Some of the people here know about it. And as a side note, we have a special guest, Phil Pressel, also connected to the Hexagon project. Thank you for coming. Now that Mr. Deutsch is retired, he does a lot of talks on cruise ships. It must be very interesting. And been doing it for over 12 years. Excellent. And you give 10 enrichment talks a month. I have to talk to you about that in a minute. His 70-plus talks include places, people, the space age, aviation, UFOs, and even Elon Musk. As an aviation buff, he's studied Howard Hughes for years. You'll have to see have you seen the racer in the basement?
Yes.
His early life, flying exploits, and construction of the famous Spruce Goose is topic for a major talk that we're really looking forward to. Mr. Deutsch.
And thank you very much, Bob.
Sure.
And I noticed got a couple of standers. We got seats up here, if you'd like to sit down. Okay. Just to embellish a little bit, I was in the Air Force for 6 years, got out as a captain, but my first 2 years were in SAC, Strategic Air Command, as a flight line maintenance officer. And then I got to Sunnyvale, California, which is the command center for most military satellites. So I was a operations director coordinating the commands that we would send up, coordinating with the CIA that was picking the targets to use, and the tracking stations we would beam our commands up, but that's a whole another story. When I got out of the service, I went to Ford Aerospace, did similar things. Then I went to Intel Corporation doing government marketing, and I ended up for 20 years at Sun Microsystems, which used to be a huge company, which the bubble hit and we went down. So I am retired, and I do speak on cruise ships. I do have 70 talks, believe it or not, keeps me out of bars. And my wife likes that part. But so I also do the cruise ship thing, which is great. I recommend if you have ability to give talks, it's great. I mean, you get free cruises, and I've been to too many places too many times. But this is one of those talks that I do give, and I am not the expert on Howard Hughes. Many of you are that, and I see you have the H1 downstairs, and that's great. And I'll talk just a little bit about it. So with that, my talk is going to cover Howard Hughes' life, first of all. So you appreciate who the man was, and then we'll get into the aviation capabilities and what he did. Okay, just a fantastic guy. So that's the format for today's talk. Goose. How it got its name is the media. They came out with that. Okay. Well, he was born in Houston, Texas. He was the son of number one, Howard Robard Hughes I, and that's him right there, the second. Now, as a child, his mother was very protective. He was an only child, and she would keep him off of playgrounds. She would keep him from playing with dirt. Even what he was eating, she didn't like him to eat red meat because a cousin got trichinosis from meat. And so she said, no, you just can't eat meat. So that was the basis for a lot of his aberrant behavior later on in life. And there he is getting a little bit older. And in school, it said that he just wasn't that good of a student to end up doing what he did later on in life. And there he is starting to look a little bit like him. Now, it is said when he was a young teenager, he was very inquisitive. And his father, as you probably know, was into the drill bit, the oil world. And he took apart the family radio and put it all back together. So he was very clever with things like that. Later on, he got into what was ham radio. And so that brought him more closer to the technology end of life there. It is said that he was built from scratch the first motorized bicycle in Houston. So a very clever young guy. Well, he went out one day with his father, and they went to a rowing contest match between Harvard and Yale. And his dad made him a bet. He says, you bet whoever you want, and if you win, I'll give you anything you want. Okay, so he bet on Yale, and Yale won. And he said, what do you want? He says, I want to fly. I want to fly in an airplane. And so he did. So that helped sow the seeds for his aviation interest. And here we're going to see a few pictures of him getting a bit older, still a very young man. And that's starting to look a little bit like when he was the Aviator, and this was, probably the last 20 years of his life. Now he got his money, and we all know that he was the richest man in America at the time. Not the world, but that's still a big amount of money. His father invented the Sharp. Sharp was a man, and they teamed together to build this particular drill bit. It was just unheard of. It was fantastic. It could go through rocks. That was 1909, and the money came from leasing it. So there was just tons of money in the Texas area and elsewhere that wanted this drill. Well, they got together and started a company, the Sharp Hughes Tool Company, where they were involved in these drill bits. Now, as he got older, he went to Rice University for a bit of time, not much. Then he went to Caltech also for some time. Never got a degree, but just was taking courses. Well, his father passed away, and he's the only son, and who gets the money? So there was a battle between his uncles, and he was now about 19, and of course he wanted that money. But he was considered underage to actually get the money. So he went to the courts and said, look at my background, look at me, I should be called an adult. And the judge agreed with him. So what he walked away with was $75 million back then. Okay, still multiply that times inflation today. And he thought back to his other interests in life. One was making movies. So he made this movie. It took 3 years, 1927 to 1930, Hell's Angels, which is actually still on YouTube if you wanted to watch it a bit. And he had 50 aircraft. It was the most aircraft after World War I that was assembled together. And he had about 130 pilots that could rotate and fly these. So that's an amazing statistic right there. You can see that it cost $4 million back then to make the movie. And there were some interesting things in the movie. But he wanted action, realism, and so he got these pilots up in the air. And these are snips from the actual movie. It's very, very exciting. It was actually a romance where two men were going after, one woman to, mix it up a little bit. So it wasn't pure war. But he was very innovative. Okay, take a look at this picture. One thing you can see is a camera mounted right on the airplane. And so the shots that he got were just so realistic, just very realistic. And in fact, that's a clip also. Look at all those planes up there. And Hughes actually flew one of these one time, and he crashed it. So he actually hit his head pretty bad and needed, some recuperation, let's say. The other thing about this picture is you can see the clouds. One of his scenes, he wanted clouds for the background, not just a blue sky. And down here in Southern California, there weren't many clouds. So he took the crew up to Oakland because forecasts were calling for cloud cover. I can imagine the expense of doing that, but he brought it up there. Here's a clip out of the movie. Now it started out as a silent movie. See some more action here. This is the trailer that they used back then.
Good sound effect.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you. So for this time frame, this is a very, very good movie.
What was the safety?
I guess a seatbelt.
No, I mean.
No, he directed this, and there were
The
good questions.
statistics, how many
3.
planes and people did they?
3 people died, but not related to the crashes you see.
Okay.
He had some remote processes that he could take that one that smashed into
Okay,
each
I was
other.
just-
But 3 people, they were ground
For
accidents.
back then, that was.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So that's a very good picture. It's not a back screen, with the guy with the machine gun. That's actually the movie. So it's a pretty long segment, for an air battle. Then they start repeating things in the trailer. So I've seen that machine gun a couple times in the trailer. So when the movie got released, before it was released though, sound was happening. So sound was showing up in movies. He said, I can't release this as a silent movie. So they actually kept the film the same, and they overdubbed with, if you will, the talking scenes. Okay, but in the talking scenes, she, in the silent movie, she was the lead actress in this romance story, but she had a foreign accent, and he didn't want that. So he hired in another lady who became very, very famous. You might have heard of Jean Harlow. Okay, so the movie was a big success, rolled out in Hollywood. It definitely was a major hit. In fact, sometimes it got panned, but in general it was a big to-do with the rollout, the red carpet and thing. It actually won an Oscar for Best Cinematography. So it was really a feather in his cap. He made some other movies that were not recognizable to any of us. He also bought RKO, which back then was a big motion picture company, 1948. He got married. Ella Rice was his wife, and they were married a very long time, and then they gradually divorced. He married a second time, Jean Peters, 1957, and it is said in their relationship they had different rooms. He got kind of weird, and they communicated by notes. Yeah, okay, it's interesting. So basically that kind of went down the drain, but he was a romancier, if you will. Jane Russell was one of his favorites, and he wanted to do her well. So he put her in this movie, The Outlaw. And this was before ratings came out in the movies. So you can see just in this poster here how exciting she might be to young men. Mean, moody, and magnificent. Action, thrills, sensations, primitive love. So this rolled out, and he said she was really, let's say, hot back then. And so he had his crew make her a brassiere that brought up her attributes a little bit more visible. And a lot of people just, of course, did not like that. So being the man of the world, he started going out with many friends. Jean Harlow was one, of course. Ava Gardner. Katharine Hepburn, and Betty Davis. Okay, so let's look at his aviation passion. Now, I told you in the beginning that he won a free flight in a plane, and that really got him going. So he did take flight lessons, and he basically knew what he was doing. 1934, he opened the Hughes Aircraft Company in Culver City, down around LA there, and that's kind of where it stayed. And later on, the Spruce Goose was put together there. So there he is as he's starting his career, and he modified this aircraft, and I've seen it downstairs now. Oh, by the way, I did want to thank Dudley for his interfacing with me on this talk. Thank you very much. Just want to make sure that I recognized you. And there it is, and I know it's downstairs, so you probably looked at this quite a bit. At the H1 Racer, and you can see how smooth it is, and I did notice that the rivets downstairs were shaved just like his plane was. 1935, he took it up, and he set the land speed record for aircraft, 352 miles an hour, which was great, but being Howard Hughes, he wanted to do it better. So he'd go around, and he went through on the time again. And unfortunately, the plane was configured for high speed, low weight. Didn't have enough fuel. Okay, so that's kind of a sad point. We'll show you that in just a second here. But he had retractable landing gear on it, as well as the rivets shaved down. So he was flying and basically ran out of fuel, decided to put it down. Minor crash, and he was kind of okay. As you know, he had a lot of crashes in his life. So this was certainly one of them. Number two, if you count the Hells Angels crash. Well, later on, he set the Los Angeles to New York record in a Northrop Gamma 2G, which is that. He modified it quite a bit. You can see the covers on the landing gear. Okay, and he actually got a plane from Jackie Cochran, who was a famous female pilot, and he was after her for that plane so he could modify it. And finally, she reneged and she gave in and sold it to him. But I'd like to see, again, the wheel covers down here. But 9 hours and 26 minutes from LA to New York. Very cool. That's the H1 in the Smithsonian. And I know you guys are going to restore it, I'm sure, to this exact colors and whatnot. So it's pretty neat. Now, because of that flight, he went 332 miles average as he went across the country. And he got the Harmon Trophy for that. Wiley Post, 1938. Now, one thing about Wiley Post, he only had one eye, But in all his photographs, he took the patch off so you could see the two eyes. Okay, just vain, I suppose. But so in 8 days and 1 hour, he went around the planet. Howard Hughes got together with Lockheed and put together this aircraft with a crew. Okay, 3 days, 19 hours. And that was such a big deal that they had a ticker tape parade for him in New York. He's right there in the car, major celebrity, major celebrity. And then he went to the White House, and there's the president congratulating him. And he picks up another trophy, the Collier Trophy for aviation. Here's a summary of all of the major awards that he got. The Harmon Collier Congressional Gold Medal, which is not really an aviation award, it's just given to outstanding citizens that Congress gives to, and the Octave Chanute Award. So all these are very prestigious. He's recognized as an excellent pilot, aviator. Now, time goes on a bit, and just to reminisce, we had two aircraft in airlines, Trans Air Transport, PAT, and Western Air Transport. 1939, they merged together, and they came up with a familiar one you might have heard of, Transcontinental and Western Air Incorporated. Howard Hughes bought them, and that became TWA. Okay, so now he's an owner of an airline. Well, while that's going on, he took this aircraft, Sikorsky S-43, in May of 1943. Just want to show you another aircraft that he had. It's a seaplane, and it's felt that this motivated him quite a bit to make the Spruce Goose a seaplane. Well, he flew it over Lake Mead and crashed it again. So he had some minor injuries, but he survived okay. Now this plane languished quite a bit. It was bought not that long ago by a private citizen and restored it, and it flies. So that's it, basically a few years ago. Now he's trying to penetrate the military, and they had a bid out for a reconnaissance airplane, and it's called the D2. This was August 1943, and you can see it down there. So they did a lot of tests with it, and he didn't win the award. It was like a P-38, okay? So he didn't win the award for the contract. But he did get together with Lockheed again and help them with his ideas on the Lockheed Constellation. Okay, and the route commercially for TWA was, basically he flew from Burbank to DC. And it was pretty advanced. The three tails were required. It's the only plane I know of that's got three tails in the back. But it was for control. They found out that it needed it. It was also pressurized. Okay, so Pan Am didn't have a pressurized craft. He could fly this higher, where there's less air, and go faster. So that was a major development. 7 hours, coast to coast, which in today's world, that's not too bad, for propellers. Well, what happened was it was such a great plane, the Air Force took it over. So that's a C-121, and that's why you didn't see a whole lot of them going commercially. So Pan Am, they bit the big one, and they pretty well started to fade away because Hughes had a TWA with the better aircraft. Okay, this is the XF-11, and in July '46, he again was competing for an aircraft design. He never got a design or a program into the government. He really wanted some government contracts, so he was trying for this. I want you to notice it's counter-rotating propellers. Okay, so he took it off, and what I'm going to show you now is an excellent, pretty realistic clip from the movie The Aviator. If you haven't gotten it, get the DVD. It is very good. A lot of romance, Katharine Hepburn and all that. Okay, you just fast forward unless nothing personal. Okay.
No, it's a good movie.
It's a good movie, yeah. So when I've seen this, that's why I put it in here. It's pretty much exactly what happened to him when he out flying it. So let's.
Right wing just did. I'm losing starboard engine. Increasing power 2,800 RPM. Cutting back. Increasing starboard engine only. Cutting back. I'm losing altitude.
Power, check starboard engine manifold pressure.
It's good, but RPMs are low.
Are both starboard pumps turning?
It looks like they are, but you pulled me back in starboard on it.
How bad is your cluster?
Full left aileron, but you won't stay level.
Wow, that was sad. So that was his major big accident. And you can see the wreckage right there. And he didn't do well out of this. So I'd recommend you get the movie, and that's what it looks like on DVD. Very good movie. But he was in the hospital a long time. Lots of drugs getting pumped into him, trying to recover. It was just a very bad accident. And so that's when he got addicted to all the morphines and painkillers and things like that. So you can see just a sample of a lot of what he started to get addicted to. Well, while he was in the hospital, he was very uncomfortable, and he was, of course, bossy. And so he got a hold of his engineers and said, "This bed stinks. You've got to make me a better bed." Okay, well, here's what he did. That's the modern hospital bed that we still have today. So that was his idea. And of course, when you got the money and the power, you can just say, "Go make me a better bed." Well, time's going on now, and the war ends. Okay, and great, so things are starting to happen, and the Spruce Goose was a little bit before this, as they started going. We'll tell you about that. But during the war, of course, we lost a lot of cargo ships, transports going across the North Atlantic. And the Germans, with their U-boats, were just having a field day, knocking them down. And a big reason that this happened is they'd go solo in the beginning to Britain to deliver products. And then they got the idea, let's go in a convoy with support ships that would discourage the U-boats, and we could take care of the U-boats. So that really helped quite a bit before we got into the war. So the government decides they want a large vehicle to take soldiers and equipment over the Atlantic and not be on the water. So they contracted with Henry Kaiser, big industrialist in the Bay Area. He's very big up there, Kaiser Hospital, I'm sure you have those down here, and other Kaiser named enterprises. So what Kaiser was first off told to do was make us lots of Liberty ships. So that's a Liberty ship, and they built those in Richmond, California. It's just across the bay from San Francisco. He built 4 shipyards. And if you're up there today, I'd recommend you take a look at them. It's right there on the water. There's a National Park Museum for Rosie the Riveter. Ford Motor Company had a large automobile plant right there. And what they did is during the war, they converted it to making track vehicles and some Jeeps. And it was right by the dock, so they would just roll them out. And as these Liberty ships were completed, they would outfit them with the electronics and whatnot, and then they would take them out. As part of the Liberty ships, there were 400 of them made, and he made one for kind of a publicity in 4 days. They had everything staged, and it was a morale thing for all the workers, and it was a major thing. They pushed it out in only 4 days. So the Liberty ships were very good. There's only 2 left. One is the Jeremiah O'Brien in San Francisco Fisherman's Wharf. The other is in New Jersey. And the Jeremiah O'Brien went back to to Normandy as part of the, I think it was the 70th anniversary or whatnot. So very good ship. They thought of configuring it for soldiers as well, but the base ship was just not designed for people. The toilets, the eating centers, sleeping centers, so they didn't take military people over there. Now Howard Hughes is still keeping at it, and he finally got a government contract. He invented the flexible ammunition belt. Before, they were just rigid and you'd shove it in the gun, but now that was a good award that he finally got. Okay, now let's talk about the Spruce Goose. The Spruce Goose. First of all, it wasn't made out of spruce. It was made out of birch, and the reason for that is the shortage of aluminum that was going on during the war. And when they started this, they told them, we want 3 prototypes, but you have to use wood. Now the press, Spruce Goose sounds better than birch goose, I guess, And it was a seaplane, not ever intended to have wheels, but they were going to make 3 of those. So the Spruce Goose started in 1941 when the war was still on, so they definitely wanted this. It has a few other names though. How about the HK-1 Hercules? Very common, we kind of know that. That's Hughes and Kaiser. And we have the H-4 Hercules. Well, after a while, Kaiser bailed out. So it was pretty much Howard Hughes doing it pretty well alone. A lot of his own money, by the way. The Hughes Flying Boat, that's another name that it was given. And for you pilots, if you know the tail number, there you go. So it was designed to carry 750 troops in this one plane, or 2 Sherman tanks. And those are very, very heavy. Okay? So this is a line drawing of the actual plans for the aircraft, the H-4 Hercules. So you can see, the three views of it. The most interesting to me, of course, is the size, but 8 engines. Now, when I was working on B-52s, we had 8 engines. We also had the KC-135s, and we'd keep track of on-time takeoffs on our truck. We drove on the flight line. We had a little placard here. And the tankers would get like 8 in a row on time. The bombers, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, like that. And a lot of it was starting the engines. Getting 8 of those engines running together was a pain. I was stationed up in northern Maine, a place called Loring Air Force Base, which was way at the top of Maine. It snowed May 30th, Memorial Day, 4 inches. Pretty bad. So from there, I volunteered to go to Thailand. So, and then I got Sunnyvale, so they paid me back. But we had these in the snow quite a bit. Many days we needed broomsticks to just turn the turbines. And they had jet assist to start the engines as well, canisters that you could put in and explosive, and it would turn the props. But having 8 of these going, and you can see the pontoons on the outboard and the seaplane approach here, which probably goes back to the plane that he worked on in Lake Mead. Now here's some dimensions. At one time it was the world's largest airplane, and on this diagram you can see some of the others that grew and grew. There's the Spruce Goose right there. So 320 feet width, that's no longer the widest wings. 78 feet is pretty well close to the highest tail, if not a tie. And then 219 feet long, which as you see there's a couple others longer. The biggest plane is recognized as this, the Russian AN-225 Mriya, Soviet Union. They built this in Ukraine. And during the current war that we're having, it was being restored and fixed up, and it was destroyed by Russian missiles. So Ukraine says, this is part of our heritage, we're going to rebuild it, and they're going to pay for it. We'll see. But this plane was built by the Soviets to carry their version of a space shuttle, which never happened. So they had this plane ready to go. It honestly sat in a field rusting away until Russia, post-Soviet Union, said, ooh, there's money to be made here by hauling very large equipment places. There is a video, if you'd like to see it, look it up. This plane landed at the Oakland airport. I didn't know it, because I'm in San Jose. I didn't know it. But it's a fantastic video, if you can look it up. Just huge coming down in. Look at the number of wheels, three engines on each side. So this was indeed a behemoth. The longest wingspan right now is this, the Stratolaunch ROC. And it's down at the Mojave spaceport down there. And it's designed to carry a vehicle underneath that would go into orbit. The Airbus A380-800 double-decker. I've never even seen one, and I think they're still out there flying, but mostly in foreign countries. They just had a lot of trouble with it in the US, and getting people off of that sucker, through one of these doors was a major challenge. Okay, now we'll get into the hardcore Spruce Goose, building a behemoth. So they went to the Hughes factory in Culver City and set it up. Had to build, larger hangars, if you will, to put it in. And here you see, it is mostly wood. Key components were metal. And here, those are those outboard pontoons. And there's one of the wings. Already got the engine mounts out here. Another long view looking down the fuselage. Now remember, this is basically slide rule days and triangles and big pieces of paper. Calculators, nope, didn't have them. So it's amazing what we can do, when we put to it. Okay, now I got a pretty good video showing you them actually building it, and let's just take a look at this. So they used a process called Duramold, which when they bent the wood, they would coat it with the Duramold, kind of like a shellac, if you will, for strength. This reminds me of the basement you have downstairs, where you're building wings and airfoils and things like that. So they're not bending metal, with big presses and whatnot. They're just sanding it down.
Which is heavier, the wood or the aluminum?
Wood. They'd love to use aluminum, but it was a shortage during the war.
So it was heavier than it would have been in real life.
Yeah, real life, yes. But that was in the contract because aluminum, was a shortage. Okay, now Howard Hughes, as time goes on, gets more strange, let's say. Washing his hands incessantly. Very germaphobe, if you will. Also, it is said that when he ate peas, he would eat them one at a time. Whoa, cut them up. So little hints that he's probably not all with it. Yeah. Okay. And it is said he would repeat himself. He, like I said, would repeat himself. Yeah, he would repeat himself. And it got to the point where his handlers, if the military was coming to check things out, they'd kind of, keep him away. Because he wanted to do everything. He wanted to supervise. He almost wanted to get down and build it. I mean, this was his passion. But that was his personality too, going back. The war ends. Surprise, the war ended and they're in the middle of making the Spruce Goose. Nazis surrendered, the Japanese surrendered. So what do you do with the Spruce Goose? It's not needed anymore. So they took him to the Senate because the Senate thought he was pocketing some money, even though he put his money into this as well. And so they were investigating him with an interview, and Senator Brewster from Maine was the main agitator. So I've got a really great clip here that's going to show you that. One of the flags to them was this, Colonel Elliott Roosevelt. He was the son of another famous Roosevelt. And he would go inspect, he was like the project manager. So he would go to the plant and Hughes would set him up with female accompaniment.
He has the DFC.
He's in DFC.
What's that?
He has the DFC.
Distinguished Flying Cross, yeah. Well, he was the son of President Roosevelt, so I'm sure he got some fast tracking going on. But that was a little shady, and he ended up marrying one of the women. So they're kind of going, hey, wait a minute. Today you can only give, I think, a gift $5, less than $5 for them to accept. Okay, so now we're going to go to the actual congressional hearing. And so you hear Senator Brewster talking to Hughes. And by the way, Hughes had bad hearing. So you're going to see him holding the microphone to his ear. And the questions are back and forth. And listen to the audience. They're laughing at his responses because he's very cocky. All right, so the story is the senator wants him to bring in a person that was involved in this. So there's the setting.
Senator, may I ask a question?
Well, now, if you'll just wait till I issue a subpoena for Mr. Mars, I've asked you whether or not you would produce him, and you said you didn't know, as I understand it.
I don't remember if that was my answer.
Well, what was your answer?
I don't remember. Get it off the record.
Well, now, Mr. Hughes, I'm asking you what your answer was. And we're not going to have this bickering back and forth. You are before this committee, and you're going to answer the question.
You asked me just now about a reply that I made. My answer is I don't remember. Now, the man is...
Well, I'll ask you again.
Yes, what?
Will you bring Mr. Mars in at the 2 o'clock session?
No, I don't think I will.
Try to bring him in.
No, I don't think I'll try. I put the sweat of my life into this thing. I have my reputation rolled up in it. And I have stated several times that if it's a failure, I'll probably leave this country and never come back, and I mean it.
So they dismissed it. They dismissed the case. But he was so upset, he said, I'm going to fly it. So he calls back to LA and tells him, get it ready. It had never flown. Okay? So what we're going to see now is the process to get it out and take it down to the Long Beach harbor there. And that's what you're going to see is the story behind that. So it's the flight. So I got some still pictures first showing, pulling it out, which was a major exercise. Now they kind of had a parade from Culver City down to Long Beach where they had to take telephone wires down and make sure that the turns were easy. So there's one of the wings. And there's more of it coming down the road. Okay, now there's back together. You can see the engine's all covered, kind of in a dry dock area. Then they're going to shove it out. So this is a pretty good silent.
You could actually walk through the wing.
Yeah.
Upright.
Yes.
So many hot poles.
Yeah.
So-
Look how small the people are compared to it.
Right.
Well, it's a football field in length.
Yeah.
Cool Meadows.
So now they're towing it.
Smaller
Can't
than
talk right now.
17. Oh, 50s.
So a major event on the highways, go and see this thing.
Notice all the oil wells in the background?
Oil well.
Yeah.
That's Long Beach. Derricks.
So Bob, is that your next project?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I moved the tables around.
So there's looking back at the tail
Wow.
and up towards the front. There he is. Nice dresser. All the gauges. Now, he announced that he was going to make 2 taxi runs, and that was going to be it. And he did it himself. He was the pilot. He had 12 crew members on board supporting the whole exercise. Old-time radio communication, telephone. All right, now we're hitting the water. So the press, the military, the Navy's got ships out there. Everybody wanted to see these taxi runs. First time it's been on the water. And he's flying. So the media's out there, and there's one of the taxis. Okay. It's massive. Okay, then he's going to turn around and do the other one. Then he tells the crew, I'm going to take it up.
Who's
What?
Who's the co-pilot?
I have no idea.
Yonches.
So most of the media started to leave because they were told, just 2 taxis. But here he is, and there's only one camera that actually was filming this that was still around. So it was dipping a little bit. Just smoking. There's the camera there. Now he's putting the pedal to the metal. And the guy in the very back said, whoa, 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 this thing's coming apart. Don't. And there it is, 1 mile at 70 feet. And this is honestly the only picture or video that I've seen of it. And then back down. So he proved to the world and to Congress that it did fly, and as he said, I put my heart, soul, and money into this, and if it's not successful, I'm going to leave the country. What a guy! What a guy! All right, so there's another still picture taken from that kind of shows it up in the air. This was longer than the Wright brothers' first flight. Okay, after that, he puts it away into the hangar, ready to fly. Engines ready to fly. Never flew again. Never flew again. So as he moves on with his life, he goes to Las Vegas, and he starts buying up casinos. He bought the Desert Sand, where he lived, basically kicked everybody out. And he liked to sleep a lot. He was really getting out on the edge at that time. And he didn't like the lights from another casino across the street, so he bought it. Turned the lights out. So there's the Desert Inn. That's where he lived, for years. Really a recluse at this time. He would take trips with his companions and go down to Mexico or the Caribbean, things like that, but really out of the public light. There he is. That's an estimation of probably what he looked like as he stayed in his room, watched real movies of real movies. No one was allowed in. He would put his personal urine in those milk bottles and put it outside the door. His workers would come in, give him Kleenexes or minimal food, and he just says, get out. So he starts looking a bit like this. There were no real eyewitnesses that went in and could really describe what it was because he was just all alone, and that was sad. Well, as time went on, he had chronic renal failure. He was 70 years old, and that's before he went in to hibernate by himself. But they took the body and did some x-rays, and that's his arm, and you can see barely a needle that was stuck in his arm. So he definitely was strange. So Time magazine came out with this, the scramble for the billions. Okay, sad that he died, but hey, he's got a lot of money. Where's that going to go? Well, he was buried here in the cemetery down in LA, and I thought this is rather touching. Howard Robar Hughes Jr., there's his dates, and somebody tossed these in there. That's pretty nice, pretty nice. Well, what happened to the airplane after that? Well, Long Beach got all excited, and they built this canopy over it right next to the Queen Mary. And has anybody been to there? Yeah, it was excellent. It was in water, and you could go up, go take stairs and go inside. Well, Long Beach kind of, it's ran its course. We're kind of done with it. So the Suma Corporation, which was Hughes Corporation, they took it over for a couple years. Disney took it over for a couple years. Finally, Long Beach says, get it out of here. So it was going to be cut up. A wing go to X, a tail go to Y, and the Southern California Aero Club had a big fundraiser. It said, no, don't cut it up. So what happened to it was they convinced this museum up in McMinnville, Oregon, the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum, that's just for the heck of it, but inside of it, so if you've not been, I think it's worth it. I've been up there twice, and it's just huge. So I did my best to take pictures of it, and they reassembled the whole thing. It's all together, and there's other airplanes in this museum. Wow.
You can do a virtual tour of that museum.
Oh, you can on your computer now. Okay, great. Well, when I was doing this, I did the tour. Took 800 pictures of it. Now, what they've done is, you won't see this in the original plane, so they cut it down for tourism. You won't see all these windows on the original plane. And in fact, when we went in, I can't remember what the admission was. It wasn't really cheap, maybe 25 bucks or 20, I don't know. But what they did is they said, you can't go up here because of ADA. Because the law said it has to be open to handicapped people. But if you were on a for-fee tour, you could. Right. So we paid another $10 or something, and we were able to get inside all the way up to sit in the cockpit. We have pictures of all of us, like that. And there's a shot of the tail, and there's the tail number I showed you earlier. And this is the cockpit, just an automobile steering wheel almost. And
no co-pilot.
Looks like a tractor.
I don't know if there was a co-pilot over here, but
there's a co-pilot.
Yeah. You just can't see him in this shot. This is the engineer station, keeping track of all the 8 engines. There's a nice shot looking forward. They can take passengers, and that was just a prototype at this point, right? And there's the cockpit up there. Looking backwards, this is towards the tail. And when they actually flew the plane, they put large beach balls all inside here with the logic that if it went down in the water, those beach balls would help buoy it up. Okay.
The wooden airplane, right?
Yeah, that's true. But it's still heavy. It's still heavy. Okay. What happened to his money? Estimated back then $3.8 billion. So he had no will. He had no relatives, no children, nada. So the problem was, oh geez, what do we do with this? Now there was a movie made called Howard and Me. I think that was the name of it. Yeah. And supposedly this guy, Melvin Dumar, was the hitchhiker or something that Hughes pulled over, gave him a ride, and he said, I'll take care of you. Well, they threw that guy out. There was another woman named Terry Moore who said, we were married. We were married. I guess we didn't tell anybody, but we were married, and he promised me. And she was such a nuisance, according to the articles. They just gave her $150,000 and said, go away. Go away. So, plus, after all this takes place, everybody's now a relative, comes out of the woodwork. So they estimate about 1,000 people put claims into it. So basically, a lot of the money went to his enterprises, the hospitals and things like that. So I like this statement that he made. I'm not a deranged millionaire, damn it, I'm a billionaire. Howard Hughes. Yeah. And so this is a lot of his enterprises. The helicopters, I think, are still around. Hughes Electronics, Hughes Space. They make, lots of stuff even today, and that's the legacy of Hughes. Now, as we wrap up here, to me, I think this analogy is true between Elon Musk and Howard Hughes.
I'm not the only one that thinks that.
Yeah. Now, Elon's got the money, but I admire him because he does things. He doesn't ask for a government grant to build these rockets that will land vertically. It's like science fiction movies from the 50s. The Boring company that he has, they actually have it running in Las Vegas. It goes from one end of the convention center to the other. But it's 2 tunnels. Now, they drive you in a Tesla. You just walk down the stairs, and it's like a taxi, and they drive you. It's about a mile between those 2 areas. And I understand he has a contract with Las Vegas to go to the airport. So it's working, and Dubai wants it also. So the Boring company, of course we know Tesla, and the tube concept that he has to build these tubes, instead of the very important high-speed rail that will take you from Merced to Bakersfield, which is a very popular route.
Already bought my ticket.
Oh, you did? Yes. Save it. Put it on eBay. Yeah. So anyway, I like Elon Musk. He's getting a little bit of the fringes out there with his Twitter thing, and he moved the whole company to Austin. And big reason he got upset with California business attitudes. When COVID came out, he refused to close the plant, so the county Alameda put all these restrictions on him, and they just wouldn't back off. And he moved the headquarters. Now other companies are moving. Oracle, also moved to Austin and a couple others. So, but anyway, that's my last slide. I'd like to say in all my talks is carpe diem, which seize the day. I say get out there and have fun. There's no guarantees we're going to be around tomorrow when you get on that rain-slick freeway.
Especially if Mr. Musk has his way.
What's that, ma'am?
Especially if Mr. Musk has his way. He doesn't like old people.
Ooh! Well, when I get to be old, I'll remember that.
I am